Governments sit across the table discussing boundaries. Our farmers are standing in their fields, wondering whether they will be allowed to cultivate their own land.
Okay.
I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to raise this special motion that this House will now discuss the plight of people living in border areas. And I would like to focus my submission to Lapangap, Mausikar and Langpi areas. So, as I've just said, that people living in the border areas are not merely residents of remote villages. They are the people who live closest to the front line of the state's territorial integrity. And yet too often, they are the last to receive protection, roads, healthcare, education, communication, electricity, water, and other essential services. So, sir, can we expect people to remain on the border and protect their connection with the state when the state itself is not sufficiently present in their daily lives? So, recent reporting confirms that Lapangap has again become a flashpoint. Meghalaya government subsequently assured that additional security of the farmers reported obstruction and harassment when attempting to cultivate their fields. And in May 2026, villagers complained that farmers were being prevented from cultivating their fields and that there had been harassment and disturbances during the cultivation season. So, hundreds of villagers subsequently marched to the Meghalaya Secretariat demanding protection for farmers. There have also been reports of agricultural huts being burned and crops being damaged in the area. So this means that for the farmer, the border problem is not merely a matter of map or a boundary pillars. It determines whether he can enter his field, sow his paddy, harvest his crop, and feed his family. In June 2026, Assam and Meghalaya government reached an interim understanding allowing cultivation in designated portions of Lapangap without the consent of the people of Lapangap. Under this interim border agreement, farmers from Lapangap are restricted to cultivating in the low-lying fertile areas, and farmers express grievance over being confined to cultivating only the low-lying areas, alleging that the higher hilltops have been forcefully occupied by the Karbis and that they have destroyed all the crops and trees planted by Lapangap people for years altogether. Lapangap farmers are paying the price. Lapangap demonstrates the human cause of an unresolved border dispute, and which is the biggest injustice to Lapangap farmers. So the most disturbing situation is that the farmers is caught between two administrations while the government negotiates the boundary. The farmer cannot postpone cultivation until the border talks are completed. Agriculture operates according to seasons. If a farmer misses the sowing season, it means no cultivation, no harvest, no income, which will result in the death and ultimately loss of livelihood. That is why border protection must include protection of agricultural areas. The June 2026 arrangement allowing designated cultivation, though it may appear to be useful as an interim measure, but it cannot become a substitute for a permanent solution. Another concern that I would like to raise is the concern of new settlements at Mausikar and Langpi areas. So it was reported that new settlement is going on in Mausikar and Langpi. The concern regarding new settlements in and around Mausikar and Langpi areas should be seriously and immediately addressed and ensure that no disputed or vulnerable border areas should be allowed to undergo an irreversible change in its settlement pattern while the boundary question remains unresolved. The government should urgently establish who are the existing residents and traditional land holders. When did new settlements come up? On whose land are the new houses or agricultural activities taking place? Whether the occupants possess valid land documents or lawful rights of occupation. Whether new roads, structure, cultivation or other permanent works are being undertaken. Whether the concerned authorities have conducted a joint verification. So, settlement can become a territorial claim. Langpi is particularly sensitive because the dispute has existed for decades. The danger is that a settlement which begins as an apparently small habitation can eventually acquire roads, houses, cultivation, administrative facilities, and other infrastructures. Therefore, I feel that the government cannot wait until a settlement becomes permanent before taking any action. If the government knows that an area is disputed and vulnerable, why is it allowing the demographic and fiscal status quo on the ground to change before the boundary is finally settled? So, the people of Mausikar, Langpi, and Lapangap are not asking the government for charity. They are asking for protection of their land, their livelihood, and their rights to live peacefully in the areas where they and their ancestors have lived and cultivated. While governments sit across the table discussing boundaries, our farmers are standing in their fields, wondering whether they will be allowed to cultivate their own land. So a boundary dispute cannot be resolved only in conference room. It has to be protected on the ground. If new settlements are allowed to come up unchecked, if agricultural land is gradually occupied, and if our farmers are prevented from cultivating their traditional fields, then the facts on the ground will change faster than the government can negotiate. So therefore, I have 6 demands before the government. Firstly, the government should immediately conduct joint survey of Mausikar and Langpi to identify all new settlements and recent constructions. There has to be a time-bound verification of land ownership and occupation in the vulnerable border areas. Thirdly, no permanent construction or new settlement in disputed areas until the boundary issue is finally settled, subject to law and due process. Fourth, permanent security arrangement for Lapangap farmers during sowing and harvesting season. Fifth, government compensation for verified crop and property losses suffered because of border-related obstruction or violence. And a special border monitoring mechanism involving district administration, police, traditional institution, and local representative with regular reports to the government. So we cannot allow the people of Mausikar, Langpi, Lapangap to become collateral damage of an unresolved boundary dispute. Therefore, it is the duty of the government to protect the land, protect the farmer, and protect the people who live in the frontier, because protecting them is itself protecting Meghalaya's territory. With these few words, I wish you may see.